And welcome everybody to episode 32 of the GrowCast show. And today with me, I have a very special guest and someone I think everyone should learn from. I learn a lot whenever I talk to him as well. I have got Veroy Chua, and he's the founder of the Real Collective, and he's a senior associate district director at PropNex. Veroy, my man, how are you feeling today?
Feeling great, man. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
My pleasure. We've got lots of questions to cover, but everybody must answer this one question, which is, what does being better than normal mean to you?
So to me, right, being better than normal, it means to surpass an expected level of performance, to exceed expectations. That is what I always think about when we come to talk about this phrase, better than normal. And I think to sum it out in one word itself, right, better than normal could translate into this word called excellence. And I think that is something that we hold very strongly, especially when we work with clients or we work with clients' real estate, or even in a setting like that, trying to be excellent.
Beautifully said. And maybe, Veroy, if I can ask you, what makes you better than normal?
Okay, good question. So I think back to the topic of excellence itself, right? In my industry, we are often measured by the records that we set when we do a real estate transaction. So far, I am very proud to say that my transactions or my record prices are always better than normal. And I think that falls back to the theory of exceeding what is of the usual level of expectations and exceeding standards from there. So I guess in a way, that kind of makes me a little bit better than normal.
And so, Veroy, maybe we can go back to the origin of how did you get started in real estate?
So for me, right, entering into this industry was something by inspiration, if you would, right? So I used to work in a social enterprise, helping children, underprivileged kids and stuff like that. And that period of my time was a time that I wanted to give, to serve. But eventually, as I grew older, I wanted to provide a better life for my loved ones and for my family as well. And I realized that people can actually use real estate to retire comfortably and to give their family a good life. And that was the direction I decided to go for. And here I am today.
It's a very, very, very beautiful and inspirational story. Yeah. And I know you founded the Real Collective, right? Maybe I want to ask, why are you called the Real Collective?
Right. So for Real Collective, we have this motto that we always say is always real people, real estate, then real results. So there is also an intentional way why I put the sequence this way, right? So we start with real people. So to me, this is a people's business. When we interact with our clients, when we actually engage with them, it's a relationship, right? Then right down to building a team of real estate agents, it's also about relationship. It's never about numbers. So to me and to my team, we always say when we put people first, right, they will then entrust their real estate matters into your hands. And going on the topic of being better than normal and excellence itself, right, thereafter we will be able to deliver real results. So that's how the thing goes. Real people, real estate, and real results.
So maybe, if that's a real beautiful story, but can I ask who or what is the inspiration behind the Real Collective?
I would say it's my wife. In fact, many of the things that we do, of the content that we put out, the key inspiration behind it is always my wife. The word real also actually came from her because sometimes in this sales environment, she actually mentioned that a salesperson can appear fake, can appear very salesy, right? And there can be like a lot of hidden things that salesperson is hiding. And of course, we have been all sold before, and we generally don't like to be sold too, right? So we came up with the idea that let's make this industry a more real one. Right? Let's be real with the things that we say. Let's be real with the things that we do. And that's why the real thing kept popping out. And then from there, the Real Collective was born. And if you guys notice the Real Collective logo right over here, the E, right, is actually tree in Mandarin. So that three things will be real people, real estate, real results again. Yeah.
I think that's a very beautiful story behind the Real Collective as well. And
thank you.
What is your mission for the Real Collective moving forward?
Okay, so for Real Collective itself, we have two arms, right? One arm is, of course, to empower realtors and then let them kickstart in this industry to give people a stronger edge when they come to this industry itself. And for that, my motto over there is we are not here to build a team. We are here to build an environment. So for realtors alike, I think that the environment is equally important. Where you have that kind of right mindset and right environment itself, right? They will be able to see the purpose of doing real estate work and how their work itself can help their clients achieve a comfortable retirement life. So that is for the realtor point of view. Right, for the consumer's point of view, because we built such a team that is so invested into value adding, empowerment, this kind of values actually translates into the people that we actually impact. So I think this thing work hand in hand to drive this mission that we have for the team.
This makes perfect sense. And I know you've been in the industry for a while, but can I ask, what are your 3 biggest learning lessons in your 10 years in the industry?
3 biggest learning lessons. I think the first thing, it's you need to manage your emotions really well, right? Because one of my mentor once told me this, is that our industry is an industry where you can be at like super chill heart rate one moment, but the next second, right, you will go into overdrive. And that is largely because of the amount of negotiations or the value of the negotiations that we are having. And that can actually cause us to have that kind of spike here and there. And in my last 10, 12 years itself, I realized that being a very logical person when it comes to handling all these high quantum negotiations actually works a lot better. You are actually able to help your clients negotiate for the best interest. So I think the first off thing would be having a good control over your emotions itself. And if you ask me, right, like, are there other major lessons? Definitely. But I think this emotion thing actually translates into a lot of things below. So if you're talking about clients, we talk about negotiations and stuff, right? It can help us. We talk about being as a real estate agent, being a solo entrepreneur per se, right? Emotions is also very important, because if you're not able to control yourself and do the things that you need to do and you set out to do, then it's very easy for you to go off track. Like Veroy, as the leader, is not going to come to you and say, why are you not doing your work? Of course, I will be there to encourage you, right? But having a personal kind of discipline and routine to stick to falls a lot back to how well you control your emotions. Yeah, so I think this would be one of the biggest lessons that I've learned so far, emotional management. Second thing that I think that I've learned a lot is expectation management as well. So a lot of times when we come into this industry, or when we take on a listing to sell, we always have a mindset that, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get that, I'm going to sell this by a certain amount of months or days or weeks. But when you don't do that, when you don't get to achieve that, then you start to go haywire. And it's not because you did a bad job. It's because your expectation towards a particular situation has not been managed well. Yeah, so I think expectation management is a second biggest lesson that I've learned. And I think these two things correlate with each other. Yeah.
That's great. I think it's very, very important as well. But I know you've got a great team as well. But can I ask, why did you want to build a team of real estate agents?
In fact, if I can say this, right, when I first started this industry, I never had a vision to build a team. I really never had, because to me, it's such a big responsibility, right? Like, they are coming into your tutorship or mentorship, and we have zero basic and stuff like that, right? So it was a very big responsibility, and I was frankly a little bit afraid. I didn't really start to grow a team until maybe the last 2 years or so. And I think what made me eventually build a team is because after being in the industry for a while, I have seen realtors of varying levels, varying characters, standards. Of course, not to say I'm the holy standard at all, right? But I've seen a lot. And I've seen people who had the potential but without the right guidance. I've seen people who are having the right guidance, having the potential but without the right values and things like that. So I thought to myself, it would be really selfish if I didn't offer the insights that I have, the values that I have, the spirit that I have when conducting sales. So that actually sparked forth the growth or the desire in me to start building. And I think the initial people that came to me were always the people closer to you, right? Your immediate friends and stuff. And it started from there. And I guess this value resonates with the team. And from there, eventually, I spread to 1, 10. Thereafter, right now, we are crossing 100 agents within less than 1.5 years. It's not because of how great I am. I think it's because of the environment that we collectively has built over the last 1.5 years or so.
And I like what you said, you don't build a team, you build an environment, right?
Indeed.
Very nice. All right, maybe my next question. I mean, you've met so many people as well. You've got a team of 100 people. What is the ideal characteristics of someone in your team?
Well, I think for the people in my team, ideal characteristics wise, if I boil it down to a very, very simple value, it is they have to be real. Yeah. Real in what sense? I believe that when you are able to treat people with your heart the way you are, I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to be English speaking, Chinese speaking, a certain style. But I think having the ability to be real with one another allows genuine relationships to form. And I think that is somebody that I'm looking for in the team. As long as you are coming onto this team, you are real about what you are, who you are. I think it's very easy for you to immediately gel into the team. Yeah. And the real context also means somebody who has ethical values. I think it correlates. As long as they have these 2 points, I think they can easily fit into this environment.
I like it. I love it. And I want to dive deeper into the property investment landscape. Shall we do that as well?
Sure. No problem.
So, now we are in 2024.
Yeah.
So, is 2024 a good time to buy property because interest rates are still so high?
Now, I'll be the typical salesman if I say, yes, it's a good time to buy, right? Well, I think whether it's a good time or bad time to buy, it is not about that. It's never about the market. It's about your time, right? If your finances is ready, if your timeline is set out very clear, and you have an immediate need or you have spare funds to put into an investment, then naturally it's the right time. Now, having the right time in real estate, but buying the wrong product can be disastrous, right? Or buying the right product at the wrong time, it could be disastrous as well. So on that topic where you mentioned about interest rates being high right now, so I just give you an example. Imagine right now in Singapore, we can actually see that the demand for private properties is still pretty high, right? Of course, there are buyers who are skirting around the fence, not sure what to do, but it is clear that they are looking, right? So what is going to happen is this. Imagine right now, interest rates are high, buyers are skirting around the circumference, not knowing what to do. The moment the interest rates comes down, what do you think these buyers are going to do? They're going to rush in to buy, right? And with a limited inventory in the market, what are the sellers going to do? Raise the prices. So with this understanding, right, would you rather understand the market, understand your needs and your personal timeline and stuff, and enter accurately, or would you like to rush in when everybody is rushing in? I think the answer is quite clear over here.
Makes sense. I like the analogy of it because you're thinking one step ahead, right? And I mean, in Singapore, mostly people invest for two main reasons, right? So maybe I want to ask you, rental income versus capital appreciation, which is better?
Rental income versus capital appreciation, hotly debated topic. I think if you were to ask somebody from the older generation, they will always say the rental yield must be good, it must be above 4%, right? And of course, the younger generation will say that rental yield, it's like not much because after you net off the interest, principal, maintenance fees, then you're probably left with a couple of $100, right? So they will say capital gain is more important. But to me, a holistic structure would be this triangle that I call capital gain, rental yield, and exit strategy. Because to me, right, it have to complement each other. You have a high yield, but you can't exit, it's going to be a problem. You're going to have a high capital gain, low rental yield, and you can exit. You might not be able to attract the right kind of investor profile that comes in. So a holistic approach would be having these three things balanced out nicely. So I don't think which one of it is more important. I think having all 3 pointers matching nicely together with your personal timeline for the investment as well as your budget, I think that forms a right core to work on.
Makes perfect sense. And does it make sense for me to rent a place while waiting for my new launch condo to TOP?
Right. Okay. So I think for this topic, we are talking about rental payments versus buying something that I can move in immediately and paying mortgage payments, right? Now, if you were to look at it from money's point of view, and when we are talking about real estate itself, there is definitely some form of emotional element to it, but I prefer to logicalize it first, right? So for a 2.5 million properties thereabout, if you go for something that is resale, taking a 75% loan based on today's interest rates, you would be spending somewhere around $6,000 on interest itself, or slightly lesser depending on what rates you take eventually. Now, comparing it to something that is progressive payment for a new launch, if you buy something about 2.5 mil, your initial payments will probably balloon up to be slightly above $1,000. Now, if you take 6,000 over minus 1,000 over, you get a net of about 4,000 over. Now, if today you are looking for buying a new launch, you probably have to rent. So if rental itself right now should be around $3,000 to $4,000, if you go on this basis, actually the amount of money that you spend on interest for a resale property as compared to the money that you spend on rental, it still offsets equally or even probably paying lesser. Now, what's the key difference over here is that when you buy something that is brand new, you probably get the maximum returns on the capital appreciation. So that's how I feel about it. Once again, like I said, there is no what you should do this way or that way. I think it must fit in with your overall investment structure and how your money flows and stuff like that as well.
Nice. And in Singapore, it's very debated, especially where schools and education are a big part of the Singapore culture, right? And you know that in areas where there's good schools, the property prices are a lot higher. So very debated question, but I'm going to ask you also, is buying a private property near a prestigious school a good choice?
Well, I think based on this, it is always good, right, when your property that you are buying have some strong attributes. Good school could be one of them. Then again, near to amenities, near to transformation within that region itself. All this forms some core pillars when we are looking for a property to purchase. School is definitely one of them, but it should not be the only one, right? I do meet consumers who tell me that, hey, Veroy, I want to buy a property that is near this particular prestigious school and so on and so forth. However, they enter into a layout which may not be the most ideal for the resale market in the future, or they enter into a development that's perhaps too small to absorb the potential demand that buyers are coming for that school. Now, to put that into context, what do I mean by that? It means that if you are buying near a school, generally we are looking for buyers with a family. Right, and if you were to buy a property that is meant for a family in the future, generally they would prefer larger facilities, nicer landscaping, more transportation links and stuff like that. So all this have to work together to form a good purchase at the end of the day. So no, I don't think it's the most important thing, but it is something to look out for.
So, Veroy, I mean, obviously prestigious schools are important, but I know, like what you mentioned, they're not the only factor, right?
Yeah.
So, other than prestigious schools, what other factors are important when buying a private property?
So, I always tell my clients this thing is we always buy with the end in mind. Now, what does that mean? We buy something that we know in the future a potential buyer will like it, right? So I think the number one thing that shines when we are selling a property in the resale market, it is actually the layout. The layout will determine how strong this property will shine in the resale market in the future. If you are going to look for something brand new right now, we are basically looking at the floor plans, right? And a potentially very dressed up show flat, which is supposed to invoke emotions and stuff like that. But when we are looking at the resale market, it's generally white walls, and that is the time where your furniture comes in. If you have a weird shaped living and dining, you have mini balconies all around, then that is not going to do very well in the resale market. So other than schools itself, the number one, I think, most important thing is definitely your layout, right? After that, I would say we go into the micro. So the macro itself, I think layout is the most fundamental thing. Micro, you have things like entry price within the location. You don't want to be the highest over there, obviously. You want to look at the floor facing. There is this thing, superstitious people say they don't like the 0404, right? But I'm here to dispel this. 0404 can still sell very well, especially if you engage the real collective to sell. Record price also. Yeah.
Makes sense. And we've got the overall outlook for the real estate market in 2024. I want to ask your opinion as well.
Yep.
So, real estate market in 2024, prices are going to go up or prices are going to go down?
Once again, I'm going to sound like a typical salesman, right? If I say prices is going to go up. But let's not just make an assumption like that. Let the viewers think about it. In Singapore itself, right, we are largely determined, our prices in Singapore itself are largely determined by demand and supply. Now, when the demand is high, supply is low, what happens to our prices? Goes up, right? When the supply is high, demand is low, then the prices will generally trend downwards. So I think it's important to look at the supply pipeline in Singapore. As of today, we are currently left with about incoming supply and new supply of about 16,000 thereabouts. Of course, happy to share in detail through a graph if, let's say, any consumers want to reach out. But our annual demand per year is between 10 to 12,000 every year. So in fact, right, at 16,000, this is supposed to last us till 2026 and beyond. We are just like 2 years plus before the supply will clear off, and based on a 16,000 left over, we clear about 12,000 every year, it will put us into a undersupply situation. And in a perpetual undersupply situation, it is up to the consumers to think where the prices will go from there.
This 15-month cooling off period is quite well talked about as well.
Yes.
So how is the 15-month cooling off period going to affect potentially new buyers from entering into the property market?
Interesting. So this 15-month wait out period, right, actually is a measure imposed by the government on the HDB segment. So essentially, it's basically preventing the private property downgraders from entering so quickly in the HDB market, because some private owners, they like to downgrade and then take the cash to retire and move into something and pay it off in that sense. Now, this is largely supposed to be a HDB measure to cool HDB prices, but why is this going to affect any property buyer who is entering the private space? Now, because as of this year, this 15-month period has already passed. Now, if you think about it, right, we have a large number of buyers waiting to enter into this space after waiting out the 15-month period. Now, these buyers will now come into the market equipped with their loads of cash, also accumulated through their private property sale, or in the last 15 months itself. They are going to come in and they're going to enter into the HDB market, right? And these HDB sellers now would be equipped with more cash. And with increased cash flow, now they will now enter into the private property segment, driving up the demand over there in an already lack of supply situation. We couple it with once the interest rates come down, we have the same concept of how the buyers will flood in, causing prices to spike again. So in a way, this 15-month period will still affect buyers looking to enter into the private property space.
I understand so much better now. And does it make sense to upgrade even though I have to top up cash to pay for my mortgage?
Okay, so I think this is what I like to call the retirement life cycle. Okay, naturally, when we buy a HDB itself, right, most of the time, your CPF OA contributions can actually cover your mortgage thereabouts. And that is where we come to the term or the idea of having a very comfortable life where I don't need to top up any cash for my mortgage and I can live comfortably. All my income is for me to use, buy stuff and things like that. But when you go and upgrade into a private property, naturally, you have to put in extra cash. Now, the first and foremost basis is, of course, going to be that way. Why? Because it's called an upgrade, not a downgrade. Now, downgrade means you don't need to put any extra cash anyways. Does it make sense? So with this, we talk about the retirement lifeline concept. Every time when you top up the cash into your mortgage itself, am I right to say 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, when you sell, all the cash that you top up comes now back to you with the appreciation of the property itself. So rather than looking at this thing like I'm paying extra cash, I would tell people, why don't you look at this as you saving extra cash for more capital appreciation, so that when you retire, you will have a bigger basket to work with. So that is how I help to align clients who are having this mental block. And many a times when we put it in that perspective, they start to see as a positive thing. Instead of seeing it now as, I'm coming out extra cash from my pocket, it's very tiring, but now I'm taking out extra cash from my pocket to save for a better retirement at the end of the day.
And I mean, Veroy, I know you meet lots of people with varying budgets, right? But I know some people come to you with a fixed budget. So what do you tell your clients, right, who have a fixed budget of 1.5 million to buy their condo?
Right. So I think the idea here is talking about the budget that you have allocated. Now, first and foremost, before we actually talking about quote unquote stretching the budget, we must look at how safe this plan is. So typically what I like to do with my clients, right, is to run through their finances first, know what kind of obligations are untouchable, and what kind of obligations are more like, self-fulfilling, that kind of thing. So with that understanding, we would kind of know their monthly cash flow already. Now, when it comes to the idea of whether should you be stretching your budget or not, we are never advocates of saying that, hey, you should stretch higher, market is so good, buy more expensive. No. It's never about that. It's actually about whether the stretch is worth the value at the end of the day. Because if let's say you have an amazing property and the budget that the client has set aside is 1.5 million, and this amazing property that can suit their needs, has probably a better facing, better view, lower PSF overall, can suit them for a longer extended period of time, then I will fall back to the financial plan to see whether it's viable or not. And if that thing checks out, then I will tell my clients, I say, hey, look, we already have a very safe and clear plan outlined for you. And with this, right, you actually enter into something of a higher value, higher ROI at 15 years later. So then again, it's no longer about, hey, stretch your budget, but it's about we are going to another property with a higher ROI or better value in return, with a very safe plan. And at that stage, if you are able to showcase that kind of relationship to a potential client, you will not have to tell them to stretch. They will say, Veroy, can we afford it? Can? Good enough? Yes, let's go. They will usually tell me like that. So I think it is back down to this concept of empowering them so that they know the purpose and the why behind they want to do it.
Right. I mean, there's a debate about en-bloc units as well, right? So is buying a potentially en-bloc unit a good idea?
I don't think anybody can spot which are going to be unblockable properties. There is this saying in the market that I just look for very old ones. Sure can en-bloc one, right? But I think fundamentally, let's understand how does Singapore property market go, right? We actually go in cycles. Each cycle will alternate between an en-bloc cycle, GLS cycle, en-bloc GLS cycle, that way, right? So as of today, we are actually in a GLS cycle. And because we are in a GLS cycle, today's land cost, material cost, manpower cost, and the increased GST has caused everything to go up significantly. If we are in a GLS model right now, why would any developer go and pay the extra premium that potential en-bloc owners are having with the expectation, with their, perceived value of the property itself? Why would developers go and pay that now? The chances of them going for an en-bloc is little to slim. But don't forget, if you go and buy into an en-bloc property thinking that there may be a chance of en-blocking based on the matrix of it's very, very old and it's likely to be torn down soon, don't forget that you will also be hit by the maintenance issues and maintenance costs that comes together with it. So at the end of the day, right, you may get yourself a lemon where you have high maintenance costs, repair costs, low rental, and a very weak exit strategy for a long time. So I think nobody can really predict is it a good idea or not. Personally, I would not go there. Yeah.
So the next question which I have for you, Veron, is if I have new developments that are developing around me, right? Does that guarantee that my property will appreciate?
Highly debated topic again. And this is probably something that you have heard from neighbors and things like that, hearsay and all. I think it's natural to assume that, if I'm staying here opposite, if I'm staying in a condo, my entry PSF is 1,002, and then we see that across the road, there's a new development coming up at 2,004 per square foot. Sometimes we will tell ourselves, now I have a chance because the people over there, they buy at 2004, they have to sell at 2008 per square foot. Now, mine will definitely have increased value because I'm cheaper. Now I can raise it up to about the 2,000 plus per square foot mark. To me, it's about the starting line. Imagine the person who is owning an older property at 1,002 per square foot. His entry price would probably be a much cheaper, maybe at around $700 per square foot. Now that would put a gap of about $500 plus per square foot already. Imagine this older property were really to hit the 2,002 per square foot mark. That would actually translate into $1,000+ per square foot difference. Now the key question is, as a buyer when we come in, based on a 1,000 square feet unit, would the incoming buyer be willing to pay a profit of about 1/1,000,000 to this potential person? Chances are highly unlikely, right? So to go with this concept, I would say that yes, perhaps over a long extended period of time, this old property will be able to catch up. But by then, the newer property would have also gone leaps and bounds as well. So it is about the time that you use to reach that price point, how quickly you can get it. Yeah.
And another highly debated topic, but very commonly talked about under coffee shops as well.
Yes.
Which is freehold versus 99 years. Which is more profitable?
Right. So freehold versus 99 years, highly contested, very debated. Some people say freehold is the best. Some people say 99 years is the best because your entry price is lower, blah, blah, blah. I think it boils down to the type of property. Now, personally, if I were to buy a landed property, generally I would go for a freehold property because the exit strategy or the buying with the end in mind, the next buyer will probably think that freehold is better, and that will give a higher perceived value, right? But if you're talking about condos in general, did you know, right, if you track the records of transactions for the last 10 years from freehold all the way and leasehold, you plot it them side by side, right? The gap in terms of the profit margins is only about 5.7%. What does that mean? That actually means that both are equally profitable. It does not mean that if you are freehold, you get to make more, or you are leasehold, you get to make less. In fact, it really depends on the product that you enter at the end of the day. You can get a good 99-year leasehold with strong amenities, strong transformation, good school, versus you may get a freehold, which is a small plot of land, not so ideal layout, with lesser amenities and so on. End up, right, the 99 years will shine. Now, the only time where you should be considering a freehold over a leasehold is when the price gap within the same location is very, very close. The moment is very, very close, then yes, it makes a lot more sense to go for the freehold. But generally, if you put both of them side by side, both are equally profitable.
That's not a big difference at all, 5.6%.
5.6, yeah.
Okay. And talking about the hot property market, right?
Yeah.
So if I sell high right now, does that mean when I buy, I'm also buying high?
Common question that I always get from clients these days is, Veroy, the market is so good right now. You're telling me to sell my property at the record price, and I believe that you can do it, things like that. But I sell high, I buy higher, ma. Then how like that? That's it. I always tell them this. I say, it is pretty much you would sell high and buy higher in that sense, because not really possible for you to sell high and buy low. Why is that so? Because only two reasons. First thing, you sell high, you sell a very good property, you sell high, you buy low because you buy something that is not so good, right? So who want to do that, right? The second reason why you will sell high and buy low is just after your sale, something major has happened to the financial world or the world at large, and it's haywire already. By that time, I probably tell you don't buy anything, maybe it's better. So the concept today is not to sell high and buy low. The concept today is to sell high and buy relevantly low in today's market. Now, relevantly low, we need to look at your entry point in the market cycle. We need to look at the product and the region that you're looking at, whether or not you are setting a record PSF benchmark in the region of the property you're entering itself. From there, that is how we determine whether you are selling high and buying relevantly low.
Makes sense. And also another interesting question, which a lot of people talk about, which is EC versus private condos, right?
Yeah.
Which should I choose?
Well, I think EC versus private condos, they may sound similar, right? Because after 5 years of MOP, 10 years of occupation, EC technically becomes private property, privatized. They sound similar in nature, but it's the waiting time associated that is different. So for ECs, of course, it takes time to build. Generally, construction takes about 4 to 5 years thereabouts. On top of that, you must add on the 5 years MOP. So if you were to try and unlock the capital gains from an EC perspective, it takes about 10 years. Whereas if you buy into a private property, your seller stamp duty clears after 3 years. So once again, it's about how long you take to get to that point, right? So generally, I think EC would be a much longer waiting time. And in fact, if you have been following the prices of ECs these days, the entry price of an EC today is already a lot higher than before. So if the numbers checks out, the plan looks safe, it might make a lot more sense to enter a private from the onset. Yeah.
And on the similar line as well, buying a bigger condo versus buying a small landed. Which should I choose?
Well, I think that one boils down to lifestyle. If we put it into a perspective of having numbers, right? Landeds typically can start from about 3 mil all the way to about whatever 100 mil or something like that. Of course, we're not talking about that category. If we just compare apple to apple, 3 mil versus 3 mil, right? Because that's the minimum entry for a landed freehold. I would say that if your lifestyle, it's more suited for something that is, more amenities, more convenience, with more accessibility itself, then a 3 mil condo will be more suitable for you. Because bearing in mind, at a 3 mil entry for a landed, it's very likely you will be in the OCR region. That means outside of core central. It would be very likely you'll be entering into a small land plot. And for landed houses itself, once again with the end in mind, right? Buyers like the wide frontage. They like a squarish, bigger plot of land. And at 3 mil itself, it's very likely you'll probably enter into something like 1,003, 1,004 square feet kind of land. And not to forget, right, the hefty cost when it comes to rebuilding the landed or to do an A&A, that can probably add you another 700,000 on top of it. So when you add all the numbers together, right, of course, you have to weigh which one makes more sense to you. Most buyers make the mistake that, I have 3 mil. I want to buy a landed, but they forgot the miscellaneous cost that is into making the landed livable, as well as the monthly maintenance cost of a landed. Gardening, pest control, all the things like that. Yeah. So it all adds up.
I want to go with regards to, I want to cover the whole of Singapore since I have you with me over here.
Yeah.
Are there any new developments in the West that are worth investing in?
So the West is what we classify as the OCR, right? Outside Central Region. And right now in Singapore, of course, it's divided into OCR, RCR and CCR. Okay, CCR being the most prime in Singapore itself. And each region actually has a segment of pricing benchmark, right? So for OCR right now, the typical price point is about 2002 to about 2005 per square foot. If we were to zoom our eyes into the western region of Singapore, there is one project which I feel is currently below the pricing benchmark, strong layout, upcoming transformation, good school, and connected to MRT station, and that would be the Botany at Dairy Farm. I find that based on their entry PSF at 2,000 per square foot, you actually have a safe gap of about $200. That would mean when you enter into something like that, you are pretty much assured of your entry price. I think in today's market, a lot of buyers come in, they probably don't have the mind to make a lot of money. Right, the making a lot of money is a byproduct or a bonus. But they always ask, is it safe or not, Veroy? Is it safe or not? Now, with a price gap of about $200 per square foot, I find it absolutely safe. So if I were to focus my eyes there, I think that would be a good project to consider. But of course, I still have to fall back down to the core matrix, right? Which is what's the budget you're looking for, your holding period, the type of bedrooms that you're buying, the facing, all these things adds up to form a strong choice at the end of the day.
Veroy, are there any new developments in the East that are worth investing in?
To me, East side, best side, right? I also love the East area. That's where we live as well. In fact, right now, I think in the East itself, there's been a lot of spotlight over there. There are a few projects that are really shining quite well. We call it the East Triangle. There are 3 projects over there. But if I were to probably put a focus, I think the Continuum is a very good buy. Because of its freehold tenure, close proximity to MRT station, good quality layout, finishing, strong and reputable developer. And because right now for a unit in Continuum, right, they're actually very close and priced near to a 99-year leasehold property. And remember, our topic is that when you have an option of a freehold that is priced very close to a leasehold, then my take is the freehold one. Yeah, so if I were to choose a project in the East that I may want to go for, in fact, it was one project that we were considering to buy as well, is the Continuum.
Veroy, are there any new developments in the South that are worth investing in?
When we talk about the South, everybody talks about the Greater Southern Waterfront. Now, Greater Southern Waterfront is a project that is going to be the size of 2 Punggol's, and we already seen how Punggol has, surpassed in terms of the margins that they get, the amount of transactions. In fact, District 19 Punggol is one of the most transacted location in Singapore. Now, putting that in reference to Greater Southern Waterfronts, the size of 2 Punggol's, right? That means, right, our government is actually placing a lot of emphasis over there. There will be homes, there will be attraction, recreation, offices over there. So I do see a new injection of life and vibrancy over there. If I were to single out one project, it would be Terra Hill, because Terra Hill is actually going to benefit quite directly from this Greater Southern Waterfront transformation. And why is this a good project to consider? Is because, first of all, freehold. Remember, in a GLS cycle, no more freehold lands will be sold. So this is a freehold plot. Freehold is very rarely near to MRT station. This is just a 5 minutes walk to MRT station. And it's also a large plot in that location itself. So it kind of covers all the core matrix when we look at a potential purchase that is strong in terms of ROI. But then again, I will always disclaim with this, the unit you choose, the layout, all this forms the final decision at the end of the day. But if I were to give a pick, Terra Hill would be one of them.
Very nice. And we have come to the end of our episode. I think we went in depth on so many things.
Yeah.
Veroy, is there anything that you think I should have asked but I didn't ask you?
You never asked my number. No. I think we covered a lot. and you also realize that after covering a lot, there is still a lot to cover. So I think in today's market, one important question that consumers should always be asking is that, how long am I planning to hold this investment or this purchase for? Because many a times consumers will tell us, say, oh, no, I will stay here forever one. But based on my transaction records, the person who stays forever usually changes about 5 to 7 years. Typical kind of changing behavior. And if we can see that already so apparent through statistics, then before we purchase something, we always need to take one step ahead to think about it. What is the length of the period we want to hold this investment for? And if we are going to sell it at the end of the day, who is going to buy it from me? I think if we approach this angle in your real estate journey, coupled with right calculations, core foundations of your purchasing matrix and stuff like that, you would very likely enter into something very, very strong in the future. Yeah, so I think to end it off, this is probably what I would say to the audience of GrowCast, right? And then with that, anybody who needs any more advice on how to spot undervalued properties which you can enter in the relevant low of today's market, always happy to share with them more. One session with me costs about $5,000, but for GrowCast members, it's all for free. No, I'm just kidding lah. Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean, you'll be seeing Veroy a lot more. We're going to be working on lots of stuff. He's got lots of amazing value to give as well. But Veroy, maybe looking straight into that camera, if somebody wants to reach out to you directly, right? Where can they find you, or how can they reach out to you? Looking straight into that camera.
All right. So if you guys want to find out a lot more about the things that we will be sharing with you, if you guys are keen on your empowerment session, typically it takes about 60 minutes for you guys to go through a full-scale empowerment session, right? You guys can reach me on my socials, on Instagram. Just search for @Veroy, that is Veroy, or you can also WhatsApp me at 81834833, and we will be here to deliver you real results.
Perfect. And that was episode 32 of the GrowCast show. I had with me Veroy Chua, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of him. You'll be seeing a lot more of him on everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you see Veroy will be there. Veroy, thank you so much for being over here, and it was a real pleasure.
Thank you.